Hi friends, welcome to biologyexamsforyou.com. Today's topic of our discussion is classification of fungus proposed by Ainsworth. At the end of the discussion, you will be able to understand the definition of fungus, history of Ainsworth's classification, classes of Myxomycota we will be discussing with examples, and also 5 subdivisions of Eumycota with examples. We will be using examples to explain the characteristics of each subdivisions of Eumycota. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and support this channel. Let's begin. How can we define fungus? It's a special group of organisms that is totally different from plants and animals. Previously we included this group under plants. Now we know that it is a separate kingdom. So this is the familiar fungus Agaricus. This is yeast. So these are the spores. Let us list out the characteristics of fungus in order to define fungus. Fungus can be microscopic or macroscopic, just like this, microscopic or macroscopic. It is eukaryotic. It is haploid. It is non-chlorophyllated, not green. It is spore-bearing, filamentous, heterotrophic as it is non-chlorophyllated. Thallophytes doesn't have a proper differentiation that can reproduce sexually and asexually. So this is the internal structure of fungus. It is having hyphae, extensive hyphae. Individual filaments are called hyphae. Aggregation or grouping of hyphae forms mycelium. Now moving into the classification proposed by Geoffrey Clark Ainsworth. He first proposed this classification in 1966 as a paper published in a journal. Later he modified the classification and published that in Dictionary of Fungi along with Bisbee, which was in 1971, this book. Then the second one, which is called as the Fungi, an Advanced Treatise, published in 1973, he also modified the classification. He is probably the first mycologist to consider fungi as a separate kingdom, even though Whitaker classified fungus as a separate kingdom in 1969. Moving into the classification. So he has given the fungus the status of kingdom Mycota. It is divided into 2 divisions, Myxomycota and Eumycota. Myxomycota includes slime molds, whereas Eumycota are the true fungus. These are the characteristics of Myxomycota. They are slime molds. At present it is not included in fungus, it belongs to Protista. So Myxomycota shows characteristics of both animals and plants. It is acellular, holocarpic and diploid. Holocarpic means the entire thallus becomes a reproductive structure. It is having amoeboid protoplasm without a cell wall, often a plasmodium, that is single large multinucleate protoplasm, which is called as xenocytic condition. Example is Physarum. And the second one is Eumycota or true fungus, which is cellular, filamentous, haploid. The diploid stage is represented only at zygote. It may be unicellular or multicellular with a definite chitinous cell wall. And the plant body is having hyphae. Individual filaments are called hyphae. Grouping of hyphae forms mycelium. Examples include Agaricus, Penicillium, etc. Now moving into Myxomycota. Division Myxomycota is divided into 4 classes. First one is Acrasiomycetes. They are the cellular slime molds. They are having a free-living assimilatory phase and often forming pseudoplasmodium or false plasmodium. Example is Dictyostelium. And the second one is Hydromyxomycetes. It's often called as net slime molds. Examples includes Labyrinthula. You can see here. And the third class is Myxomycetes. They are the true slime molds, which is having plasmodium, which is saprophytic. Classical example is Physarum. And the fourth class is Plasmodiophoromycetes, which is parasitic inside the host, often parasite in cabbage, then parasites in algae, etc. Examples include Plasmodiophora. So these are the 4 classes of Myxomycota according to Ainsworth. Now, as I said, this group, slime molds, are not included in the kingdom fungi. It belongs to Protista. Ainsworth has taken a specific morphological character for classifying Eumycota into 5 subdivisions. That character is the septation. As you can see, this fungus, as you can see, the filament is having a cross wall. Then it is called a septate hyphae. Hyphae are multicellular with cross walls. So adjacent cells are separated by a septum. Example is Agaricus. Whereas in this case, you can see there is a single mass of protoplasm with many nuclei floating. This condition, this multinuclear condition, is called a cenocytic condition. That isn't seen in Rhizopus. Now moving into the subdivisions of Eumycota. Eumycota is divided into 5 subdivisions. First one is Masticomycotina, which is considered as primitive. So let's take an example, and we will be using this example to understand the characteristics. As you can see, this is Pythium. Pythium, as you can see, it is aseptate without septa, multinucleate cenocytic condition. There is no septation in the hyphae. Then there are motile spores, as you can see, asexual reproduction by zoospores, sexual reproduction by gametangel copulation. There is Oogonium and Antheridium, and oospore is also formed. So these fungus are often called as zoosporic fungus. A flagellated stage is present, which is represented as zoospore. So these are the characteristics: aseptate cenocytic, asexual reproduction by zoospore, sexual reproduction by gametangel copulation. Examples include Albuco, Pythium, Saprolegnia. Moving into the second subdivision, that is Zygomycotina. The most common example is Rhizopus or bread mold. So we have given a video on life cycle of Rhizopus. You can refer that also. Here you can see this hyphae is also aseptate without septation, therefore cenocytic. Regarding the spores, spores are non-motile. Non-motile spores without flagella, often called as aplanospores. Then there is a zygospore formation. As you can see, this is zygosporangia. Inside, zygospores are formed. So sexual spore is zygospore. Now let us summarize the characteristic. Aseptate cenocytic condition, asexual reproduction by non-motile sporangiospores. Sometimes it is also called as aplanospores. Flagellated cells are absent. Sexual reproduction by gametangel fusion. Zygospore is formed, which is a very resistant spore to extreme environments. Example is Rhizopus. Now moving into the third subdivision, that is Ascomycotina. Ascomycotina are also called as sac fungus because ascospores are formed inside this sac called ascus. So now the characters include, as you can see, this is a septate fungus. As you can see, this is a septate fungus. Very well developed mycelium with septation. Then the sexual spores are called ascospores. Ascospores are formed often 8 in number, that is seen inside the ascus, and this fruiting body is called as ascocarp, which may be like this, which is called as perithecium, flask shaped, or it can be cup shaped like apothecium, or closed like cleistothecium. Then asexual spores are exogenously produced non-motile spores, which is called as conidia. So these are the characteristics of ascomycetes. They are called as sac fungus because the sexual spores, ascospores, are formed inside this sac called as ascus. So these are the characteristics. It is called a sac fungus. Septate, asexual reproduction by non-motile conidia. Flagellated cells are absent. Sexual reproduction by ascospores, often 8 in number. Ascocarp may be apothecium, which is cup-shaped, perithecium, which is flask-shaped, or cleistothecium, which is closed without an opening. Examples include Saccharomyces, Penicillium, and Pezzehyssa. And the fourth subdivision is Basidiomycotina. In the case of Basidiomycotina, classical example is Agaricus. It is well developed, having most number of species. As you can see, the typical sexual spore is called as basidiospores, that is formed on a club-shaped structure which is called as basidium. That is why this fungus group is called as basidiomycetes. Often 4 spores are formed at the tip of this basidium. Asexual spores are conidia. Then there is a special type of septum between these cross walls which is called as Tolipor septum. Now let us summarize the characteristics. They are called as club fungus because the basidium is club shaped, which forms the basidiospores. Then it is septate, well developed hyphae with Tolipor septum, a special type of septum. Asexual reproduction by non-motile conidia, whereas sexual reproduction by basidiospores, that is formed on basidia. Examples include Agaricus and Puccinia, which is a parasite. Puccinia is a parasite that causes wheat rust. So we have given the life cycle of Puccinia, very beautiful complex life cycle, you can refer that also. And finally, the 5th subdivision is called as Deuteromycotina. So they are called as fungi imperfecti. Sexual reproduction is absent. So they reproduce by means of conidia. This is called as macroconidia, crescent-shaped conidia, and this small one is called as microconidia. So they are called as fungi imperfecti as sexual reproduction is absent. They are having a well-developed septate mycelium with Tolipor septum, just like basidiomycetes. Asexual reproduction only by means of conidia. Conidia organized to form certain structures like Sporodokia. Sexual reproduction is completely absent. Examples include Fusarium, Cercospora, etc. Now let me summarize the classification. Ainsworth classified kingdom fungi or mycota into 2 divisions, Myxomycota and Eumycota. Myxomycota is divided further into 4 classes: Acrasiomycetes, Hydromyxomycetes, Myxomycetes, and Plasmodiophoromycetes. Division Eumycota is divided into 5 subdivisions. First one is Masticomycotina, which is considered as primitive with 3 classes. Then Zygomycotina, that include Rhizopus, our common bread mold, that is further divided into 2 classes. Then the third one is Ascomycotina, which is further divided into 6 classes. And the 4th one is Basidiomycotina, which is divided into 3 classes. And finally, Deuteromycotina, which is called as fungi imperfecti, or where sexual reproduction is absent, that is further divided into 3 classes. So this is about the classification of kingdom fungi proposed by Ainsworth. If you find this video useful, please subscribe, share and like this channel. Thank you so much for watching. You are with biologyexamsforyou.com.